Hi there. Nick and I would like to welcome you to our presentation at the Walters Art Museum here in Baltimore, Maryland. Today we are on the third floor of the museum in the ancient Near East Wing. Now, many of these artifacts were found when English and French archaeologists began looking for locations mentioned in biblical texts during the 19th century. The history that they uncovered in the ancient Near East covers an extensive period of time, 2,500 years almost. Many refer to this era and region as the cradle of civilization. It's given this characterization because it's the first place where we see these urban societies start to, flourish and grow, and engage in trade and organize their society. And one of the things that we can tell about this civilization, with the artwork in front of us, is how important religion was to them. What we're looking at right now is a piece from 2500 BCE in a region that we associate with modern-day Turkey. Here we have a Sumerian votive statue depicting a male worshiper. And it's important to note when we're looking at this statue that even though he looks a little bland, more than likely he had much more color on him. He was decorated. He might have had hair. And more than likely his eyes would have been the most striking element. They would have been represented either by paint or some kind of precious stone. But overall, they would have had this wide open gaze that would have just jumped out at you. And this gaze is believed that the wide open eyes let God into their bodies easier in the afterlife. And that fact alone indicates that this statue and these pieces of art are really functional pieces of art. And as functional art, they tell us even more about the culture, because the poor individuals probably weren't wealthy enough to commission art like this. So more than likely, these were commissioned by wealthy individuals. It's also important to note that because these pieces of artwork were stored inside of temples that were not open to the public. Wealthy individuals generally had these statues constructed and then carried into the temple by a priest. And typically, these statues had prayers to their god inscribed somewhere along the base. The sculpture that we are looking at now, unfortunately you can't see it, has an inscription located on the back of the man's shoulder. It indicates he's praying to the goddess associated with Mercury, and hopefully I don't butcher this name. It's Ninshubur. Let's go to another interesting aspect of this statue, which is the body position. This, just a few hundred years after this era of votive statues, Gudea of Lagash would conquer all of Mesopotamia. And to show his strength, power, and piousness, he had sculptures commissioned and placed all over his new empire. And he used this body position, this body pose, with showing himself with the arms crossed and hands clasped, to give him a pious reverence to the gods. And when you look at it, it gives you a sense of serenity, a calmness almost. And while Gudea commissioned his work from very expensive hard stone called diorite, this figure in front of us today appears to be made from some type of limestone. Now, like I said earlier, originally it would have been a lot more colorful with the eyes being painted and represented by jewels. Um, but unfortunately, even with these pieces, even when they were whole and looking their best, not many people were able to see them, and that's a shame. They were kept in these temples, and temples in that area played a much different role than we traditionally think of today. And here I'm going to let my partner tell you a little bit more about those.